This video is being brought to you today by Atlanta Gold and Coin Buyers, Metro Atlanta's premier gold, silver, and rare coin dealer. We all know how to stack precious metals, and we all generally have an exit strategy, but does your strategy take into consideration the capital gains tax imposed by the IRS when you sell? Well, we're going to talk about that and more, so stay tuned. Well, how you doing out there, YouTube? Welcome to another episode of the Silver and Gold Stack Attack. I hope everyone's doing well, and I'd like to thank you for being here to check out the latest video. The support is always appreciated. You guys are the absolute best, and I couldn't do it without you. All right, so today we're going to talk about when it comes time to sell your gold and silver, and what the IRS expects from you when you do. They want their share, folks. There are a lot of things to consider. Now, I was fortunate enough to do an interview with Tony Davis of Atlanta Gold and Coin Buyers, and well, he was an absolute wealth of information. Now, that said, please take this video with a grain of salt, and be sure to do your own research with a tax specialist when you decide to sell your gold and silver. Nothing here should be construed as financial advice. Now, that being said, this interview ran about an hour long, so I'm splitting it into two parts. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll part one. All right, we're live. So we're here today with Tony Davis, owner of Atlanta Gold and Coin Buyers, which is a family-run business that specializes in buying, selling, and appraising gold, silver, platinum, and rare coins in the city of Atlanta. Tony's been published on several leading industry websites like Coin Week, the American Numismatic Association, Coin Collector, Coinflation, just to name a few. I actually found Atlanta Gold and Coin when I was researching tax implications of selling gold and silver. And I stumbled onto a fantastic article that Tony had written on the subject of on his company website. And you'll find the link to that in the description. So how you doing today, Tony?
Good. I'm doing great. How about yourself, Neil?
I'm doing well.
Good.
First off, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to be with me today. So to kind of help us muddle through what I think is one heck of a complicated facet of gold and silver ownership. And that is the implication of selling your precious metals. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, sure. My pleasure. Happy to be here, and appreciate you reaching out, and glad that you found our article and found it to be helpful. And we'll cover a few additional topics that maybe weren't covered in a lot of detail in the article, just to give your listeners some guidelines as to what to expect.
There you go. All right, Tony, while we have a minute, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Atlanta Gold and Coin Buyers. And don't be afraid to plug your company a little bit.
I appreciate it. Yep. So I'm Tony Davis with Atlanta Gold and Coin Buyers. I have owned the company. It's going to be 13 years in April. So we've been around for a little while. Started with real humble means. When we got started, it was operating in flea markets, meeting folks anywhere at any time to try to get a deal done, and just worked hard on trying to establish a name for ourselves, a reputation. It's tough business to get into, especially when you have a lot of people who have been in the industry for decades. And so just worked hard, and been blessed to work with great people, have great customers, many of whom we met 13 years ago and are still customers today. And some of that success has allowed us to expand our business, add some folks, and really work on just growing the business. And one of my main points of focus over the past couple of years really has been to provide educational resources. I really want to bring folks up to speed. There's a lot of misinformation when it comes to coins, bullion. We meet with folks all the time that either bought or their loved ones bought some overpriced numismatic coins that they're only going to be able to receive a fraction for. when the time comes to sell. And, every time I see that, it makes me angry. So, I know I'm not making a whole lot of friends out there with some of these articles that that I write. But, I hate to see that. I hate to see people being taken. I love when people make a good investment, when they see that investment is profitable. And, I'm always learning as well. So,
Absolutely.
while I do write a lot, I'm constantly learning every day. And so, effectively just never run out of topics to talk about, simply because there's always something new that I'm being exposed to as well.
That's right. It's the same for us when we create the videos. We're basically learning some things that we didn't might not have known before.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So I do a lot of research before I launch a video. So I'm teaching myself in the process.
Well, good, good.
So, all right. Well, thank you, Tony.
Sure.
So if any of you are ever in the Atlanta area and you're looking to buy or sell, be sure to check in with Tony and Atlanta Gold and Coin Buyers. All right. So as I already mentioned, buying gold and silver seems to be, let's say, the easy part of what we do.
Sure.
But what about when it comes to actually selling it? Well, there are quite a few IRS related pitfalls that we need to be aware of. And that's what Tony and I are going to discuss today. We've got about 10 of the most common questions that come up when it comes to selling gold and silver. So you ready to go, Tony?
I'm ready to roll.
All right, let's roll it. Number one, question number one. Do I have to pay a capital gains tax when I sell gold and silver? What are the thresholds?
Yeah, good question. So, you unfortunately do. So, gold and silver are viewed, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. I know we're going to cover some other topics related to how they're viewed, but yeah, gold and silver, when you sell them at a profit, they are subject to taxation. Certainly from a federal standpoint, and in states, it's changing. So we're seeing some legal tender laws right now that are being passed in states which exempt um, state tax for for any profits realized through the sale of gold and silver, which is great. We're
Right.
seeing that there are more and more states that are passing such laws, and we hope to continue to see that grow. And it only makes sense, because really at the end of the day, you're not really making a profit. It's just an indication as to how much the dollar has lost. Effectively, it's been devalued. So hopefully we'll continue to see that roll out state by state, and maybe at some point we'll see an exemption for federal taxes as well.
Gotcha. Now, I don't know how accurate this is, but I've heard that junk silver has a threshold of 1,000 or more as reportable. So less than 1,000 in sales of junk silver, 90%, you don't have to pay taxes, but anything over, you do have to report it.
So from a dealer perspective, there are some items that we are required to report to the IRS, and there are a lot that aren't, and it really seems to be somewhat arbitrary. But I can roll through some of those items now, or if you want to discuss them later, we can do
No,
that.
yeah, I think that's actually one of the questions we're gonna go over. But
Okay, sure.
and there's such a difference. There's a difference between rounds and bullion and bars. I mean, it's enough to drive you nuts.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. And many of your listeners probably are aware that a round or a bar is typically privately issued,
mhm.
as opposed to a coin, which is government issued.
Yep,
And so those are viewed a little bit differently from the IRS, and
that's right.
how they determine what is reportable and what is not.
Yeah, my biggest thing with junk silver, or 90%, is I don't understand how you can pay capital gains and taxes on money with a denomination that you could actually still use. It's crazy to even think about it.
Yeah, you're correct. Absolutely. So it's yeah, this is my, and you still even today will occasionally find some 90% silver in your change, at least maybe some 40% half dollars.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is. I think, and it's not real clear cut. I don't believe that the Morgan and Peace silver dollars are subject to that reporting threshold. I believe it's the dimes, quarters, and half dollars. So, again, consult with an accountant.
Hmm.
But I don't believe the Morgan and Peace dollars are subject to the reporting. So that would be a 90% silver coin that would not qualify for a 1099.
Right. So it seems like they're counting the silver content versus the actual denomination on them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Now,
Yep.
just a quick question. They wouldn't consider Morgans and Peace dollar. Do they consider them collectibles or 90% silver?
I Again, probably something best to run by your accountant, but the information that I have received from my consultant is that the dimes, quarters, and halves are the only items that only 90% that are subject to a potential 1099. But
Gotcha.
the reality is that the coins in general, the sale of coins are considered collectibles by the IRS and
Gotcha.
are subject to different tax rates than you might think.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, again, this video could probably be a few hours long if we actually touched on everything. But
Oh, sure,
for,
sure.
for the sake of time, we'll move on to question number 2.
Okay, sounds
All
good.
right. Number 2. When will the dealer report a purchase to the IRS and for how much?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, dealers are, we are required by law to report certain transactions. So what we do is we try to notify folks in advance just to make sure that nobody is caught flat-footed or surprised.
Yep.
And so, there are a number of different things that qualify for a report, and most of it has to do with bullion. And again, that would be privately produced items. So, it's we can talk. Did you want to talk about the individual thresholds for each of those?
I think we're going to actually touch on that one in a minute.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, but effectively, it's not so much the value of the transaction; it is the specific items that you're
Correct.
selling.
Right. Okay. All right. Number 3. Can I sell some? We know the average threshold of reporting is what, like 10,000, I guess, before you start raising eyebrows. Would that be correct?
That is correct. So
I know some go by ounces, believe it or not. So it depends on the ounce. But let's use that threshold of 10,000 for an example.
Okay, and that would be so that would be cash.
Okay, yeah.
Is what we're talking about.
Yep. So using that threshold, can I sell some of my metals one day and then go in and sell more the next day to avoid the IRS forms? So in other words, can I do 9,500 today and come in tomorrow and do another 9,500? Will that keep me good?
So the problem with that is the IRS may view that as structuring, trying to circumvent the IRS forms. So you have to be real careful, and dealers have to be careful as well. From our standpoint, we want to make sure that we're abiding by all the IRS guidelines, and so we never want to recommend structuring or assisting with it. So what we do is we tell people kind of what the thresholds are, and let them determine how they want to handle things.
Yep.
The sale, again, the interesting thing, and this might be something new to you as well, Neil. So I'll share this with you. The cash thresholds, which require the issuance of a form, are only when the seller is receiving cash. So it's a little different. It's not. It doesn't apply to a coin dealer. So a coin dealer can actually pay out more than 10,000. without issuing a form, but a buyer, or excuse me, a seller to us can't. I turned that around. I apologize. But effectively, when we are selling something, we can't accept more than 10,000 in cash. If we do, then we're required to issue a form. However, when we are buying something, we are able to pay in excess of $10,000 in cash without a form. So
Gotcha.
it's a little different. You know, it's not little different rules apply to buying and selling. And I apologize for making
No, that's perfect. So my thought process on that is structuring might actually trigger a flag at the IRS.
Correct.
Okay, so we probably want to avoid that.
Exactly.
All right, cool. All right, question number 4. And now we're moving into some of the things that we've already covered. Which bullion isn't reportable when purchased, regardless of the amount spent?
Yeah. So, and that is just about everything, which is a good thing. And so, you know, for instance, your 1 ounce American gold, silver eagles, probably the most popular items that we deal in, are not subject to reporting. And there are plenty of other coins. You know, it's really the bullion that that has strict thresholds.
Yep.
And with the bullion, kind of rule of thumb is with the bars, it's a kilo, 32.15 ounces. Silver, it's 1,000 ounces. Platinum, 25 ounces. Palladium, 100 ounces. And so those are going to be the items where if somebody is selling those to us, if they meet or exceed those thresholds, we are then required to issue a 1099-B when we purchase those items.
And that counts toward the government issued eagles. And I mean, can you sell as many eagles as you want without reporting?
Correct.
Okay.
So
and that counts from what, if I understand it correctly, I may not, because I'm learning a lot of this myself.
Yeah, of course.
Gold eagles, American gold buffaloes, silver eagles, and some foreign mints as well. Canadian maples, Philharmonics, kangaroos. The way I understand it, they're not reportable as a sale in any quantities because they're considered what, private bullion, or is it something else?
So they are, yeah. So the most of the items that you mentioned are not subject to an IRS reporting form. So they, you know, so if somebody sells coins, bullion for a profit, they still should pay a, you know, if they still should pay capital gains, and
Gotcha.
they can report that to their accountant. So it's not, you know, it's not so much a profit or loss standpoint. It's just what we are required to do from a reporting perspective. So yeah, so you can, you know, you can sell all of the silver eagles, all of the gold eagles that you want. There aren't any forms that we fill out related to that transaction, but that person is then responsible to follow up with their CPA or accountant to determine if there's any tax liability. So yeah, you know, nobody likes forms, right? And so, you know, the important thing, there's, you know, and we'll go into these forms shortly, so I won't get too far ahead of myself, but we'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, we could just sell as many as we want, and you guys, as the buyer, don't have to report the sale, but it's an integrity issue on our part. If we've made a profit, then we need to go ahead and report that as a capital gains, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so it, you know, at the end of the day, it has to do with the the forms and what triggers the issuance of a form and what doesn't. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. And again, 99% of items are not subject to a 1099 form. So that's the good thing. And I would encourage anybody who's looking to sell items to check. They can check with their local coin dealer and see. And again, we'll get into this in a little further detail later. But there are some situations such as an inheritance where it's really not a big deal. And
Gotcha.
and again, we can talk a little bit more about that shortly.
Yep, we've actually got inheritance coming up.
We do. Yep.
All right, good deal. And one last note on that. I believe platinum and palladium bullion coins like eagles, maples, koalas, they fall into that category as well from reporting from the dealer standpoint, correct?
So from the dealer standpoint, the only platinum palladium that I am aware of that is reportable is when we purchase 25 ounces or more of platinum and 100 ounces or more of palladium, and that's in the form of bars.
Bars, correct?
Bars, that's correct. Yeah.
Right.
So to my knowledge, again, unless the guidelines have changed, and I don't believe that they have, then those coins that you mentioned would not be subject to a 1099 report.
So for everyone listening, I guess you're going to pay more of a premium on all of these. We already know that. But eagles, buffaloes, silver eagles, maples, those probably are your wheelhouse when it comes to selling everything back. And as far as palladium and platinum, watch out for the bars if they're over 25 and 100 respectively.
Correct. Yep. That's
All
a
right.
good rule of thumb.
Sounds good. All right. Question number 5. What if I use a cashier's check instead of cash? Is the purchase still reportable?
So a cashier's check it's viewed a little differently by the IRS. So a cashier's check under $10,000 is viewed the same as cash. Which is really interesting. So you could write a personal check, and a personal check is not going to be subject to a reporting threshold. But if you have a cashier's check under 10,000, so as an example, and we won't get too far ahead as far as the 8300 form, but let's say, for instance, somebody has they're looking to purchase $16,000 worth of items, and they want to use $8,000 in cash, $8,000 in a cashier's check. Well, that cashier's check, being that it's under $10,000, is viewed the same as cash from a reporting perspective.
Right.
And a lot of folks don't realize that, but you could do, let's say, for instance, you wanted to make sure you were below that threshold. Somebody could pay with a wire, with a personal check, and that's not viewed as the equivalent of cash, and it wouldn't trigger having to have a file or a form filed.
Good deal. All right. Well, speaking of those forms, let's go ahead and get into them. Question number 6. What is a Form 8300?
Yeah, it's interesting. Most folks think of 1099s, right? And so you think, oh, well, if I'm going to spend over $10,000, it's going to be a 1099. And the 8300 form is one that I think the public, generally speaking, isn't familiar with, but it is the form that is used when a coin dealer receives in excess of $10,000 in cash. So it's something, we have our kind of internal guidelines is we just don't accept in excess of $10,000. It's just not good business as far as we're concerned to have that much cash on hand. And so we kind of nip that in the bud right away just with our internal policies. But there are people that do want to make a large cash purchase, and they can, if a coin dealer is receptive to accepting in excess of $10,000 in cash. And so you just have to be cognizant of that. And, the government's concerned about, money laundering and things like that. And so, that doesn't mean that somebody with a good bit of cash came about it illegally. A lot of people just store cash weekly, monthly basis. You might sell a vehicle and request all cash simply because cashier's checks can be counterfeited. So there's a lot of reasons why someone might have a lot of cash. So there's really nothing wrong with it from that perspective. But folks do need to realize that if they are going to make a purchase in cash in excess of $10,000, then a coin dealer is required to issue an 8300 form.
Got it. And that kind of rolls us into the next one, which is Form 1099B. What about that one?
Yeah, 1099B is, that is related to those various thresholds that we talked about earlier. And I apologize, I was getting a little ahead of us.
No.
But yeah, so there are certain items in certain quantities that trigger the issuance of a 1099B form to the IRS. And we've covered some of those, but now that we're discussing this particular topic by itself, I'll just kind of run through the list so your listeners know exactly what applies. And so just kind of starting from the top, gold bars, again, that's a kilo or equivalent to a kilo, which is 32.15 troy ounces. And then you have 0.999 fine silver bars, totaling 1,000 ounces. So it could be any increments up to 1,000 ounces. Every once in a while, we actually buy 1,000-ounce silver bars, which weighs 65, 70 pounds. So those are always fun.
Oh, yeah.
You need to make sure you're wearing a back brace for those days. The platinum bars, 25 ounces or more. Palladium bars, 100 troy ounces or more. Palladium bars are interesting. Palladium is, and we can maybe talk about palladium again in a future episode. But yeah, palladium's just, it's a metal that a lot of people just aren't that familiar with. We do buy palladium occasionally. I can tell you in the 13 years we've been in business, nobody has had 100 troy ounces of palladium.
I was just going to say, I own exactly 1 ounce of palladium. Yeah. Okay. And I'm kind of regretting that, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine 100-ounce bar of palladium. I can't.
Yeah.
My brain can't even wrap itself around that.
Yeah. I mean, it's, it would truly, I would love to see it. Quite honestly, 100-ounce palladium bar. So we buy palladium, somewhat frequently, but they're typically in 1-ounce sizes. And you see a lot of palladium coins more so than the bars.
Yeah.
But there is a threshold for palladium, in the event somebody has a whole bunch of it they're looking to sell. With respect to the gold coins, you had mentioned the maple leafs previously. So the silver maple leaf coins are not subject to any type of reporting, but the gold maple leaf coins are. And it is when somebody sells 25 or more 1-ounce gold maple leaf coins.
Mm-hmm.
And same goes with South African gold Krugerrands. Same threshold, 25 or more. And then we have the Mexican gold onzas. I assume they're referring to
the Libertads.
The Libertads, exactly. And then as we had talked about earlier, the US 90% silver coins, $1,000 face value or more for the dimes, quarters, and half dollars. And so, some of this seems to be arbitrary. I've thought about it before a little bit. And so what we see is a country to the north of us and a country to the south of us, Canada and Mexico. And then I know, with South Africa, there was apartheid, at one point in time. So, just trying to wrap my head around why these particular items, best I could come up with. Uh, but to your point with the 90% silver coins, I mean, these are U.S. coins that were used in circulation. Seems a little silly to me that there's any type of threshold for U.S.
Money
coins.
for
Yeah,
money.
for money, exactly.
It's crazy.
And but there is, and that could be any combination. So, if somebody has $900 face value in dimes, and 800 face value in quarters, these aren't viewed as separate transactions. You combine the total face value regardless of the denomination.
Gotcha. So along those lines, before we move on from that one, we know the dealers are going to file these two forms. But
Correct.
what about peer-to-peer sales, when people are just, hey, I want 10,000 of your silver eagles. You're a buddy of mine. We're friends. We're neighbors. I want to buy 10,000 of your eagles. Now, nobody's going to report that.
Yeah, well, I can't really speak to that simply because we're not in that situation as a dealer. I haven't looked into the laws regarding
Like
private
private sales,
transactions.
non-dealer
Yeah,
sales.
yeah. So I suspect that there probably aren't a whole lot of 1099s being filed for private transactions. Uh, but I could see somebody wanting to possibly protect themselves, and so it's always possible. I would really caution your listeners when it comes to buying from the public, unless it's somebody that you really know. We have seen time and time again people buy counterfeit items
Oh, the
from
counterfeit stuff is running rampant right
yeah, from people
Terrible.
on Craigslist, Facebook,
Oh, yeah.
you name it.
I
Somebody
don't think
needs.
Facebook has had a single legit ad for any kind of bullion.
Yeah, you're probably right. And again, if it's funny, we had somebody email me the other day, and he said, this particular site was offering to sell me 10-ounce silver bars at $20 an ounce. This is when silver was 24. He's like, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I'd love to purchase silver at $20 an ounce, but I can't." So a dealer certainly is not going to sell it to you at that price. So
You know what the funniest part of that about the Facebook? You'll read through these Facebook ads. We all know they're fake, but
oh
there are quite a few that don't realize it. But then you get the ones that think they know what they're talking about.
yeah,
They'll come on board. Let's say they're selling eagles for spot 24, whatever spot is today, 24 and
sure,
cheap.
yep,
And you get these guys come on, they say, well, I wouldn't pay $1 over spot for that. Silver is only worth 24.80, and I'm like, dude, you're not getting what silver is. You cannot buy at spot. It's rare that you're going to buy anything at spot.
well, yeah, exactly, and
And is that the real worth of silver? Spot price, we all know that's a paper, so it's an ETF thing. It's a paper price.
Yeah, no, you're exactly correct. Yeah, so it's a futures paper, paper price, derivatives, however you want to term it.
Yep.
If you want to determine what the real value of silver is, you look at what various coins and bullion are selling at, and that will give you a more accurate indication as to the market.
Well, maybe someday we'll all be in agreement on the actual value of silver, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's at some point there's, we're going to see some exchanges that come out. I know, like the Shanghai Gold Exchange, where most of their settlements are in physical metals.
Yep.
And so that's a little bit more accurate, as opposed to COMEX, where just read like a fraction of 1% are settled in physical, and so it's not really not a true indication as to what the physical.
No, we've all. I mean, Our fathers moaned about manipulation. Our grandfathers moaned about it. Their fathers moaned about it. This has been going on for a long time.
Oh, of course, of course.
The manipulation has just been insane. But
Oh, absolutely.
that's a completely different topic for
Nope,
another
yep,
day. For sure.
that is. There's
We could
no
go
doubt.
on and on and on about that. All right. There you have it. Again, take this video and all related information you find within with a grain of salt. In the end, you have to do your own due diligence when it comes to tax purposes and everything else related to the IRS. We just don't want to cross them and come up on the receiving end of anything negative from their standpoint. That's for sure. But be sure to drop a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on all this. I'd love to hear from you. And be on the lookout for part 2 to be released tomorrow. And check it out. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Silver and Gold Stack Attack. And if you made it this far, well, kudos to you. I will definitely catch up with you in the next episode. But in the meantime, get stacked. Get stacked. Stay safe and be well, everyone. I am out of here. Peace.